honestly, guys notice it more when you're out winning games, right? If Cleveland starts off in a bad start, they're not doing well, and all of a sudden Shedeur or Dillon Gabriel are doing well in 7-on-7, they're throwing dimes, and practice drills, the number one defense can't stop them. People take notice of that, and the more that the players see it, they're gonna then the comments start happening over the lunch table. They start happening throughout the building, and that's when the pressure really will get severe.
The Cleveland Browns were focused on resolving their quarterback situation until Jason Kelce made pointed comments that triggered a strong reaction from ownership. The response inside the organization was immediate and intense. What exactly did Kelce say that has the dog pound on edge and the front office under pressure?
We've seen that miserable game by the Cleveland Browns. So they throw Joe Flacco in there, and I like Joe Flacco. He did good, but they gave him the resource of all the first-team guys. Then they throw Dillon Gabriel in there with first teams and second teams. So Dillon always is getting protected. The same thing again, they gave this scrub max protection on every play. Yeah, he completed some passes, but let's talk about his mistakes. He's still inconsistent with his throws, but he at least had max protection.
The Cleveland Browns continue to be defined by inconsistency and avoidable setbacks. Even as fans hoped the organization had turned a corner, Jason Kelce, fresh off retirement, offered a direct critique that reignited doubts about the team's direction. His remarks implied the franchise's structure and decision-making remain unstable and recent progress may not hold. The takeaway for leadership is straightforward. Identify core issues, align on a coherent plan, and execute with discipline. For supporters, it's another sign that the problems run deeper than a single season.
They throw Shedeur Sanders in there with the lowest cab drivers you couldn't even get on 5th Street. And I'm pissed off, bro, because the play calling was abysmal. Look, even if you don't like Shedeur, Shedeur didn't even get a chance to be trash. Even if you think Shedeur is garbage, he didn't even get a chance to be garbage. That's how awful the offensive line was. Kevin Stefanski still doesn't want to give Shedeur second strings and first strings reps. Why is that?
Browns ownership's response shifted from measured to urgent. The pattern is familiar in Cleveland. The team once treated Johnny Manziel as a franchise solution, retained Hugh Jackson for a second year despite results, and invested heavily in Deshaun Watson through a costly trade and contract. These decisions reflect aggressive but poorly aligned planning. The outcome has been continued instability instead of sustained progress.
That this was the guy that they wanted to start. He's seasoned, he's experienced, he still has a big-time arm, even at his age, and they open with the Cincinnati Bengals. They wanted that experienced guy. He was always going to be the guy. They were not going to start Dillon Gabriel or Shedeur Sanders in week 1. Kenny Pickett had a hamstring injury. It makes it easy to go with Joe Flacco. And the question isn't and wasn't going to be who's the starter in Cleveland. The question is, who's going to be the backup in Cleveland? Who's going to be the number 2 quarterback when they open the season against these Bengals?
Fans still show up season after season, expecting improvement and bracing for setbacks. The usual pattern has been early optimism followed by a gradual collapse. But last season was different. For a sustained stretch, the Browns looked organized and competitive, resembling a functioning team.
Couple days, 3 days until roster cutdowns, how do you feel about that? Do you feel like you belong here on this team?
Obviously, I think overall as a player, I feel like I put in the work. I feel like everything I do, I try to do it to my best, and that's all I ask for. So I feel like everybody feels like, they should be on the team, and if you ask anybody on the team, would they feel like they belong, in their own eyes. So I feel like I do, but I'm my own player, I think about myself in a high regard.
The front office entered the offseason confident. Kevin Stefanski was being praised, and the Dog Pound believed the team had made real progress. Then Jason Kelce delivered a pointed assessment that cut through the optimism. Fresh into retirement, the former Eagles All-Pro and Super Bowl champion said Cleveland still looks like a team patching over issues rather than building a durable contender. Kelce's view was direct. The Browns' structure is fragile, and the roster is too dependent on perfect health at quarterback. He argued the team is one injury away from losing continuity and sliding backward. Because Kelce has operated inside a stable, championship-level organization, his comments carried weight with players, media, and fans. The reaction was immediate. People took his critique seriously, not as outside noise, but as an informed evaluation of how a successful team should be built. Ownership also felt the impact. Jimmy Haslam's response shifted to urgency, a sign that leadership recognizes the stakes. The criticism arrives in the context of prior high-risk decisions, especially the fully guaranteed $230 million commitment tied to Deshaun Watson. Watson has missed time and shown inconsistency when available, and the contract has constrained flexibility. Kelce's remarks highlight why depth, alignment between the front office and coaching staff, and a clear contingency plan at quarterback are non-negotiable. The takeaway is straightforward. Cleveland must convert last season's progress into a stable framework, protect the quarterback, deepen critical positions, and establish a plan that survives injuries and short-term setbacks. Without that, the games that fueled optimism will remain temporary.
If you're a betting man, who do you think starts for the Browns at quarterback?
Okay, this is the situation. Kenny Pickett, they actually traded for him. Joe Flacco, no one's bringing Joe Flacco in the building thinking Joe Flacco's going to be the starter. If Joe Flacco is your starter,
You got a problem.
you have a huge problem. And if they were saying Shedeur was the starter as the 5th rounder, you got a real problem too, because he passed over all these guys in these reps in the offseason in shorts, in bikini shorts, Speedos and stuff. Like, no. That kind of stuff. So I'm not that surprised when you put down a 3rd round pick on a quarterback. You do believe he has a certain skill set.
Jason Kelce stated the obvious. Cleveland committed to a quarterback who hasn't played at an elite level in years, and Joe Flacco's playoff run didn't change the long-term outlook. Ownership appeared more upset that the criticism was public than by the substance of the critique. Many fans agreed. They've seen this pattern before. Rosters age, injuries are inevitable, and when a single contract dominates the cap, one setback at quarterback can undermine the entire season. Kelce's broader point was about structure. The Browns prioritized the high-cost, uncertain starter over depth and contingency. The late-season surge masked issues that remain: limited cap flexibility, thin depth at key positions, and an offense that lacks a credible plan B. Fans recognize how quickly a strong defense can decline with injuries, and how an offense without redundancy stalls. The AFC North raises the stakes. Baltimore with Lamar Jackson sustains a top standard. Cincinnati with Joe Burrow returns to contention when healthy. Pittsburgh rarely slips below .500 under Mike Tomlin and wins with defense and consistency. In that environment, Cleveland can't rely on perfect health or peak form from one player. The path forward is clear. Diversify cap allocation, reinforce the offensive line and receiver depth, carry a legitimate backup plan at quarterback, and install a scheme that functions regardless of who is under center.
Given what we saw yesterday with Shedeur Sanders, somebody on the Cleveland Browns is 100% getting fired, probably by the end of this year. The person who's probably going to end up getting fired is Kevin Stefanski, because I know that he didn't want Shedeur Sanders on the team. It was Andrew Berry who made that pick. You can't really go against your GM. Bad things happen in this situation. But Shedeur Sanders is not without fault for what we saw yesterday. This is the play that we saw yesterday that has the internet just exploding, where Shedeur Sanders took like a 24-yard sack. Half of the internet is saying that this is all Kevin Stefanski's fault.
Cleveland showed progress last season, but the underlying concerns remain. Jason Kelce highlighted them directly. The Browns' long-term plan is fragile, cap-constrained, and overly dependent on perfect health at quarterback. His comments focused attention on structural issues, roster depth, continuity in coaching, and a sustainable offensive approach, rather than a single hot streak. That criticism resonated because it reflected what many around the league already see. Ownership's reaction underscored the sensitivity. Jimmy Haslam has presided over frequent coaching and quarterback changes, and external scrutiny carries weight when it comes from a respected veteran with championship experience. Kelce's remarks reinforce that last year's Joe Flacco stretch was a short-term solution, not a foundation. The team still needs a durable plan that can withstand injuries and inconsistency. The practical takeaway is clear: stabilize the system, diversify cap snap usage and build depth at key positions so the offense functions regardless of who is under center. That includes a coherent development pathway for younger talent such as Shedeur Sanders, with defined practice reps, protection, and scheme alignment. Kelce didn't say anything outrageous. He articulated the gap between a brief surge and a credible long-term contender.
I have the faith of a mustard seed. Right, because this is the greatest resurrection since Jesus the Christ. Right, like at some point, Joe Flacco was thinking about getting into TV.
Yeah.
Right, Joe Flacco didn't have a job, and then now you not only come back and start for the Cleveland Browns late in the 2023 season, but they came back around to you. You're now the day one starter for a franchise that just 2 years ago was in the playoffs.
I'm about to unleash about Shedeur Sanders. I just watched what happened to Shedeur Sanders in the Cleveland Browns' third and final preseason game. And I'm outraged, I'm sickened, and I'm saddened. By the way, Shedeur continues to be treated in the National Football League now by those sorry-ass Browns and sorry-ass Kevin Stefanski.
The Cleveland Browns are once again mishandling a promising quarterback. Skip Bayless criticized the organization for failing to develop Shedeur Sanders and for misusing his skill set. He argued that the team's decisions are undermining Sanders' progress and turning a major investment into a cautionary example. Bayless pointed to inconsistent usage, questionable play calling, and a lack of clear direction as key issues limiting Sanders. He said the Browns need a defined development plan and stronger support if they expect Sanders to succeed. Skip Bayless delivered a direct, critical assessment this week. After seeing Shedeur Sanders in a Browns uniform, he argued that Cleveland is mishandling the quarterback and undermining his development. Bayless said the team's approach shows poor planning and inadequate support around Sanders. He dismissed excuses about strategy and emphasized the need for better coaching, deployment, and protection. In his view, the Browns are setting themselves up for problems before the season begins unless they establish a clear plan for Sanders. Given the team's recent decisions, his reaction is understandable. Cleveland has a history of inconsistent quarterback development. Shedeur Sanders is a premium prospect, the son of a Hall of Famer, a proven college performer, and a widely recognized figure. The organization should prioritize his reps, protection, and a clear development plan, not place him behind Dillon Gabriel as if he were a secondary option.
But I'm going to answer this question by saying Shedeur Sanders, and I'm going to tell you why. I think he's being set up to fail. That's right, I'm going to say it.
Okay.
Here we are on national television, right? There's been 11 practices, if I remember correctly. He's been starting against, he's been playing against the third unit. He's fourth on the depth chart. And then suddenly you throw him into the start line, and he hasn't had any reps for the first team at all. Think about that. So you're just going to throw him to the wolves like that, huh? I mean, you know, if he had first team snaps in practice.
Yet here we are. Cleveland has one of the most publicized prospects and is handling him like a depth piece. The broader issue is the franchise's long record of quarterback instability and inconsistent development. That history colors every move they make. When the Browns draft a quarterback, fans don't anticipate a long-term answer. They brace for another reset. Shedeur Sanders should be treated as a priority, not as an afterthought behind Dillon Gabriel.
Let's give him a chance. Let's give him a chance with the play calling. You know you have an offensive line that isn't playing that well. So what do? Why not just play the short game so he can get the ball out of his hands very fast to run a competent goddamn offense? Outside of that, Shedeur has to be better in understanding that the offensive line that you're working with right now is not adequate. Why not allow the players that are competing for a job, in this instance, Shedeur Sanders, to finish off the 2-minute drill?
When Browns fans see another quarterback selected, they brace for another setback. The franchise's recent history, from Johnny Manziel's failed stint to the rocky handling of Baker Mayfield, reflects inconsistent development and short-term decision-making. Against that backdrop, Skip Bayless's reaction to Shedeur Sanders on Cleveland's roster was blunt. He argued the team is already mishandling a premium prospect by treating him as a secondary option instead of a centerpiece for the future. Bayless's position is straightforward. Sanders is not just a name, he brings proven college production, leadership traits, and significant visibility that can strengthen both the offense and the organization's broader profile. Burying him on the depth chart behind Dillon Gabriel signals a lack of a clear development plan and wastes early momentum. Instead, Bayless contends, Cleveland should establish a defined pathway. First-team practice reps, protection and personnel tailored to his strengths, deliberate play calling that accelerates processing, and measured in-game opportunities that build confidence and execution. In his view, the Browns need alignment from the front office to the coaching staff to prioritize Sanders' growth. Continuing to treat him like a depth piece risks repeating the same cycle that has undermined previous quarterbacks. Committing to a coherent plan gives Sanders and the franchise a realistic chance to convert potential into sustained performance.
Shedeur is lighting it up in practice every day. You're not even a half bit curious to see what he could do with the ones. That makes no sense. And then on top of all of that, you got players going on podcasts and talking to people in the media saying this guy is really good. Like, this guy is legit. So even your peers respect you enough. How is it that the coaches can't see that? It always starts with the players, where the player's like, hey, you see that? You seen that pass he threw?
The Cleveland Browns were taken by surprise when quarterback Shedeur Sanders stepped in for first-team snaps, asserting control of the drill and instantly highlighting deficiencies across the rest of the room. His confident command forced coaches to pause practice clips, reevaluate progressions, and consider immediate adjustments to the depth chart. Within minutes, discussions spread throughout the facility and online forums as fans weighed what Sanders' showing means for the current starters. The organization now faces an urgent, data-driven decision on whether Sanders should move up permanently. Shedeur Sanders arrived at Browns practice, took several first-team reps, and the entire quarterback group immediately felt the pressure. Coaches erased the whiteboard and reviewed their plans. Staff members exchanged concerned comments, and observers began asking whether Sanders was positioned to assume a larger role.
Tony, every year we see at least 1 to 2 teams. They were in last place in their division the year before. No one thought they'd be good, and then they were good. It almost seems like no one's even assuming the Browns can be that, but we see it happen every year. And I get the quarterback stuff, but like, correct me if I'm wrong, Tony. The Browns are trying to run the football, play good defense, not turn the ball over in the passing game, and try and take advantage when they can, correct? That's what they're trying to do.
That was the 2020 offense.
The Cleveland Browns are still searching for stability at quarterback. Deshaun Watson is yet to deliver consistent starter-level production that justifies his contract, and each game renews doubts about whether he can regain peak form. Behind him, rookie Dorian Thompson-Robinson shows promise but remains inexperienced and unpolished. Coaches are evaluating alternatives each week and may need to adjust the depth chart if progress stalls. The roster around them is built to contend now, so ongoing uncertainty under center is increasingly costly.
As we talk about, we do believe in best player available. We do believe in positional value, and we didn't necessarily expect him to be available in the in the 5th round, and so we love adding competition to every position room and adding him to compete with the guys that are already in there. We felt like that was the appropriate thing to do.
The Browns quarterback group is unsettled. Deshaun Watson has yet to provide the reliable, high-level play his contract demands, while rookie Dorian Thompson-Robinson remains promising but unpolished. Depth behind them consists mostly of veterans whose experience lies more in holding clipboards than leading offenses. The coaching staff needs an immediate answer, not a 3-year development project. Shedeur Sanders enters as that potential solution. At Colorado, he passed for more than 3,200 yards despite working behind one of college football's poorest offensive lines, consistently demonstrating poise, quick processing, and accurate ball placement under heavy pressure. Film shows steady reads and disciplined footwork, traits that offset concerns that his profile is built on family name or media attention. Cleveland viewed the signing as a low-risk, high-reward move. Early in camp, Sanders received a handful of first-team snaps intended merely as an evaluation. Those plays quickly changed practice tempo. The ball came out on time, receivers hit their landmarks, and the defense struggled to adjust. Coaches immediately expanded the review using phrases such as evaluate every option, an indication that the depth chart was no longer fixed. Watson sensed the scrutiny. Thompson-Robinson increased his urgency. Within minutes, competition in the quarterback room intensified. Sanders repeated that performance in subsequent sessions. His footwork remained clean, progression sharp, and throws firm and precise. Each strong rep forced staff to reassess the plan to keep him buried on the developmental track. The broader context magnifies the pressure. Cleveland's roster is built to contend now. Fans are weary of quarterback turnover, and the front office cannot afford another costly misstep under center. Around the league, rookie passers rarely wait multiple seasons anymore. Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, CJ Stroud, and even late pick Brock Purdy established that precedent. If Watson opens the regular season and struggles, public calls for Sanders will grow, especially if the rookie flashes in preseason. Alternatively, another team could attempt to acquire him if Cleveland hesitates to elevate his role. Each scenario underscores the same reality. Sanders' emergence has turned a routine camp evaluation into a critical decision point for the franchise.
And we saw Dillon Gabriel go 11-11 with the first team, Shedeur Sanders go 11-11 with the second unit. So that was really the big wrinkle today.
Yes, and of course, it was the first time that we have seen Shedeur Sanders get any of those coveted 11-on-11 reps. Of course, again, it wasn't with the first team offense or against the first team defense, but it's progress. And that means that he's going in the right direction, that the arrow is pointing up. He's coming up the learning curve. So that's good for him. And I actually thought just overall, he had a better day than Dillon had today. He completed more passes. He was more on point. In fact, in that 11-on-11 period, he threw a near touchdown.
Desperation can push franchises toward aggressive decisions, especially when their quarterback options appear unconvincing or outdated. One scenario now emerging is that Sanders earns enough confidence to take full preseason reps with the starters, forcing Cleveland to revisit a depth chart it believed was settled at the beginning of July. His practices demonstrate that the excitement around him is grounded in measurable performance. Accurate, high-velocity passes against first-team defenses, and confident command of the huddle. Each strong outing also heightens league-wide interest. Rival scouts adjust evaluations, and general managers revisit their notes, aware that a viable young quarterback may soon become available. Inside the facility, the personnel staff must balance short-term results with long-term roster planning, knowing that an early move could reshape salary cap allocations and locker room dynamics. The pressure on Watson and Thompson Robinson escalates accordingly. Both must produce visible progress to maintain their current roles. Cleveland's recent history shows how quickly promising quarterback situations can devolve into controversy. The franchise has turned potential breakthroughs into organizational turmoil before, so observers remain cautious about how this competition will unfold.
What do you think is happening in Browns camp? What do you think is going to happen there before I let you go, Lewis?
You know, I think it really does. It really does all depend on how Kevin is able to, as it relates to Shedeur, work him in enough. Well, one, Shedeur has to earn the right for Kevin and the staff to have discussions about, hey, we got to get him more reps with the ones and twos. We got to get him more reps with the ones and twos when we're going team period, not just walk through or not just 7-on-7 team.
Louis Riddick reacted sharply on air after viewing practice footage from the Cleveland Browns. The clip showed quarterback Shedeur Sanders executing a string of precise throws while the Browns head coach watched with a broad smile. Riddick questioned whether the session was focused on evaluation or celebration, arguing that visible enthusiasm from the staff could cloud objective assessment of a rookie's progress. Earlier in the segment, Riddick's tone had been measured once the Sanders highlights appeared. He criticized the perception that a routine practice was being treated like a marquee event. He stressed that coaching reactions should remain subdued until performance translates into game situations. Riddick concluded by calling for accountability and asking the Browns to clarify how they plan to manage expectations for Shedeur Sanders as training camp continues.
Couldn't imagine me myself saying, hey, you know what, as someone who has been at the very bottom to try and ascend to like some level of success, I could never imagine going, you know what would be really cool? I'm gonna play a joke on someone like this and make pretend that I'm a GM and I'm drafting you when actually I'm not, and then I'm gonna hang up and just giggle about it. I mean, what the hell are we doing? Seriously, what are we doing when we think that that kind of crap is funny?
I don't know. Trying to get likes on TikTok.
I don't have the right words for it.
Right, Lewis, I'm gonna say this.
I don't have the right words for it.
Few situations unsettle a former front office executive faster than watching coaches celebrate a rookie quarterback before pads come on in August. In Louis Riddick's view, the Browns staff did more than acknowledge promise. They acted as though they had already secured their franchise leader. Throughout the session, Shedeur Sanders delivered 40-yard throws off his back foot, ran crisp 2-minute drills, and displayed steadiness rare for a first-year player. According to reports, each successful rep drew audible admiration from the sideline, highlighting how quickly enthusiasm has escalated. When Riddick reviewed the same practice tape and heard the glowing comments, he challenged the reaction on live television. He argued that a few controlled drills should not override the methodical scouting and development work that normally guides roster decisions. Riddick's criticism focused less on Sanders' talent than on the evaluation process. He warned that comparing a prospect to established stars or joking about renaming the stadium creates pressure before the player has taken an NFL hit, faced a disguised coverage, or logged a preseason snap. Praising potential is acceptable, he said, but anointing a savior in July risks repeating the organization's history of premature quarterback expectations. Sanders brings confidence shaped by his father's legacy and his own disciplined preparation, yet Riddick insists that progress must be confirmed over time. He urged the Browns to temper public excitement, follow a structured development plan, and reserve celebratory reactions for on-field results that matter. Regular season production under live pressure, not highlight clips from a midsummer workout.
He has to earn that. Kevin has to figure out a way to do that, so then you can reasonably assess what you have in him compared to Dylan Gabriel, compared to Kenny, compared to Joe Flacco. If you don't, then the conversation surrounding him is going to continue to be what it's been, which is, but for some people, he was overhyped all along. He's not that great of an athlete, doesn't have a big enough arm. There's a reason why he was a 5th-round pick, blah, 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 which I don't believe. I believe if he is given enough reps, earns enough reps, and then is given enough reps in meaningful situations, he can throw the ball just as good as Joe, if not better, just as good as Kenny, if not better, just as good as Dylan Gabriel.
After more than 2 decades in personnel and broadcast analysis, Louis Riddick was dismayed to see a franchise bypass basic evaluation standards after only a series of eye-catching minicamp throws. Reviewing practice footage from Cleveland, he observed Shedeur Sanders drilling 40-yard passes against uncovered receivers and running 2-minute sequences with poise. In Riddick's view, those reps, conducted without pads, contact, or a disguised rush, show arm talent but reveal little about how a rookie handles game pressure. Riddick said the Browns' reaction drifted from objective assessment to outright admiration. Multiple reports indicated coaches were sketching new concepts for Sanders during dinner and referring to dedicated Shedeur packages well before a padded practice. Even the veterans in the quarterback room showed no visible alarm, a sign that staff excitement had already reset the internal depth chart conversation. The analyst emphasized that his concern is not Sanders' skill set. He acknowledged the quarterback's arm strength, footwork, and composure, but rather how quickly the club appears willing to declare him its long-term answer. Riddick cited several past prospects who received similar midsummer acclaim only to stall once real competition began. Given Cleveland's long history of quarterback turnover, he argued the organization should focus on incremental milestones, processing post-snap reads, surviving live pass rushes, and rebounding from mistakes on Sunday afternoons. Riddick urged the Browns to temper expectations and follow a structured development plan so Shedeur Sanders can progress without undue pressure. One coach reportedly admitted he replayed Tuesday's scrimmage film so often that he lost sleep, an anecdote Riddick offered as proof that enthusiasm is already outpacing reality.
All asking now is what is going on with Shedeur Sanders, and so the floor is yours. Maybe you can make sense of this free fall with what was at one point the top-rated quarterback in this draft class.
Yeah, see, I think at this point in time, this really isn't a football discussion any longer. This is a personal discussion. This is about it's a fit discussion. It's whether or not teams are just comfortable with everything that comes along with Shedeur in terms of who he is as a person, all the people that are surrounding him in terms of his inner circle, and whether or not teams deem that to be something that they're comfortable with. Right or wrong, that's the only conclusion you can really come to at this point.
Louis Riddick voiced an escalating concern during the segment. Having witnessed numerous quarterback setbacks in his career, he worries another may be forming, not because Shedeur Sanders lacks talent, but because the praise around him is growing without restraint. Sanders has simply attended practice, delivered accurate passes, led the huddle, and shown the composure expected of an NFL player. Riddick fears the Browns' reaction, treating routine drills as proof of long-term success, risks setting premature expectations. He cautioned that the organization seems ready to celebrate a franchise savior before Sanders has taken a competitive snap, noting that such early adulation has derailed promising prospects in the past and could impede Sanders' measured development. The 2025 NFL Draft was expected to be Shedeur Sanders' moment. Many projected him as a top 10 talent and a headline quarterback in one of the most discussed college football storylines in years. Instead of walking across the stage on the first night, he waited through 3 days without a call. There was no celebration, only silence. When the phone finally rang at pick no. 144 in the 5th round, it was the Cleveland Browns. With that selection, the financial outlook changed dramatically. The Sanders family believes this was not a typical draft slide, but the result of coordinated action. They are pursuing a $100 million lawsuit alleging collusion across parts of the league. In the months before the draft, Sanders was consistently discussed among the top quarterbacks in the class. Television and digital analysts praised his poise, accuracy, leadership, and command. Scouts highlighted a 74.1% completion rate, record-setting stretches at Colorado, and his rise from an HBCU star to a national figure. Consensus expectations placed him in the first round or early second. Draft night unfolded differently. As picks accumulated, there was little indication that his name would be called. The atmosphere at his private gathering shifted from anticipation to doubt. When the Browns selected him late on day 3, projections for his first contract dropped from an estimated range in the mid-$30 million to approximately $4.6 million, with corresponding reductions in likely endorsements and long-term positioning. According to Deion Sanders and others close to the family, this was not about performance, injury, or conduct. They argue it was coordinated. Attorneys were contacted immediately. The allegation is straightforward. Sanders' value was suppressed intentionally. The family's position is that this was a calculated decision within parts of the league, not an isolated set of evaluations. The legal claims focus on communications that, if authenticated, could be significant. Internal emails, text messages, and owner-to-owner conversations. The family's representatives contend that these materials show a deliberate effort to avoid drafting Sanders in early rounds based on perceived image concerns rather than football merit. One message reportedly under review framed the decision in branding terms. Drafting Shedeur would mean inheriting the Prime brand. The complaint asserts that this view led some teams to discourage others from selecting him unless necessary, not for film-based reasons, but to avoid perceived attention and external pressure tied to his family's profile. A related thread involves speculation about team fit and willingness to play for certain franchises. Past public comments by Deion Sanders were interpreted by some as signals of an Eli Manning scenario. The family's view is that these were strategic statements, not ultimatums. They argue that rather than engage in discussion, teams chose a passive approach, no direct rebuttal, reduced contact, and a collective reluctance to invest a premium pick. If phone records and written communications corroborate coordination, these items could become central exhibits. Media tone shifted as the draft neared. Coverage that had emphasized production and leadership began highlighting intangibles, interviews, and perceived coachability. Anonymous sourcing appeared in multiple outlets, with claims that Sanders skipped combine drills out of arrogance, bristled at film critique, or told one club, "Maybe I'm not the guy for you," after a tense session. A widely cited line, "Nobody wants a celebrity backup quarterback," was voiced by Colin Cowherd and circulated as shorthand for risk. The Sanders legal position is that these narratives did not arise organically, but reflected a coordinated leak pattern that undermined his market value. The family's contention is that this was primarily about control and compliance rather than football ability. They point out that Sanders did not fail a drug test, was not suspended, and did not produce poor athletic testing. His college resume included elite stretches and significant program elevation at 2 stops. The legal claim asserts that the league's power structure resisted a high-profile player aligned with a high-profile parent coach and an independent media presence. The allegation is that teams sought to avoid the perceived complexity that would come with selecting him early. The financial impact is a core component of the damages claim. Had Sanders been selected late first or early second round, projected 4-year compensation would likely have fallen between $30 to $35 million, with immediate access to higher tier endorsement opportunities and the brand leverage that accompanies a franchise quarterback designation. As a 5th round pick, the initial contract value is a fraction of that total, and associated off-field opportunities are typically narrower. The suit reportedly seeks not only lost salary, but also the broader economic value linked to draft position, sponsorships, licensing, and the visibility that accelerates an early career trajectory. The filing's scope, as described by sources close to the family, extends beyond the league office. It may involve media outlets, scouting firms, and specific executives if discovery shows coordination or materially false statements that affected value. The argument is that the draft slide harmed not only Shedeur, but also the broader Sanders brand, affecting perceptions of Deion Sanders as a recruiter, coach, and public figure. The family's view is that narrative construction around brand risk and celebrity backup produced a measurable economic and reputational loss. If a court authorizes discovery, the process would likely compel emails, internal draft notes, and message archives from teams and third-party intermediaries. Subpoenas could be served on media organizations for sourcing records related to anonymous quotes. That level of transparency would be unusual and could reveal how information flows during pre-draft periods. The legal theory moves beyond a single player's evaluation to the draft's integrity, whether owners or executives acted in concert to reduce a prospect's value for reasons unrelated to football performance. The league has not publicly addressed these specific allegations. Background comments from executives characterize the claims as overreach. The family's camp maintains they have documentation sufficient to proceed. The comparison points referenced by observers include Deflategate, Spygate, and the Colin Kaepernick grievance, not because the facts are the same, but because of the potential scope, policies, practices, and the balance of power between the league and individuals challenging its processes. Another dimension of the dispute involves how the NFL perceives Deion Sanders, Coach Prime, and the autonomy he promotes. He built a large media footprint around his programs at Jackson State and Colorado, elevated his players' profiles, and spoke openly about fit and leverage. The family contends that this visibility, combined with statements about preferred destinations, triggered resistance. The complaint frames the response as a preference for compliance and predictability over independent branding and public negotiation. The suit also addresses the pre-draft decisions that critics point to: skipping the Senior Bowl, declining full workouts at the NFL Scouting Combine, and candid interviews about team fits. The family characterizes these as strategic choices commonly made by top prospects, not evidence of entitlement. Their view is that similar decisions by other players did not produce the same narrative because those players fit more comfortably within league expectations. The risk calculus is clear. Bringing a suit of this magnitude invites professional consequences. The family acknowledges that some within the league may react negatively. Their position is that the principle at stake, transparent and fair valuation, warrants the risk. The message they intend to send is that manufactured narratives and coordinated devaluation should face scrutiny, particularly when they affect earnings, opportunity, and reputation. If the case advances, several outcomes are possible. The court could find insufficient evidence of coordination, limiting the scope to individual judgments protected as opinion. It could also find enough to proceed to broader discovery, which would have implications beyond one player, including potential changes to how teams document evaluations and how media handle anonymous sourcing close to the draft. Agents might push for reforms, including clearer guardrails around leaks and standardized prospect communication records. For now, Sanders is working within the Browns structure. He has avoided public escalation beyond confirming focus on preparation and development. The lawsuit is a separate track managed by counsel. This dual approach, professional routine on the field and legal action off it, reflects the family's strategy. They intend to contest the process they believe harmed him while meeting club expectations day to day. The core allegations remain consistent across their statements. A talented quarterback saw his draft value suppressed by coordinated behavior tied to branding concerns and public positioning rather than football merit. Media narratives amplified that shift, and the result was a substantial, quantifiable loss. The remedy sought includes compensation and a measure of accountability that could deter similar conduct. Whether the claims are ultimately proven will depend on documentation and testimony. If emails, texts, and call logs substantiate coordination, the impact could be significant, prompting policy review around pre-draft communications and media engagement. If not, the case may narrow to disputes over opinion, perception, and the gray areas of scouting. Either way, the filing signals a willingness to confront entrenched practices and to test in court how far the process extends beyond film and interviews. This situation has moved from speculation to litigation. It addresses control, image, and power in a system that influences careers and compensation. It also underscores how public narratives can shape market outcomes. Sanders' path now has two tracks: earning opportunities on the field in Cleveland and seeking redress off the field for what the family views as an avoidable and orchestrated loss. The questions at stake are larger than one draft slot. They touch on how the league values independence, how information is weaponized, and what recourse exists when a player believes the evaluation moved from football to optics. The answers will emerge through practice reps and, potentially, through discovery and a courtroom record.
I view things as I got time. I got time to be able to grow and mature, and be able to understand the ins and outs of the defenses and be able to get the good insight from the vets in the room. So I look at it as, a plus. And whenever, it's time for me to play.
Shedeur Sanders rolled into Browns camp and instantly made the whole practice feel like a recess pickup game. NFL vets suddenly looked like they'd forgotten the playbook and were just trying to keep up.
With that being said, I see some balls coming out of Shedeur Sanders at that camp, and I'm like, kind of looks like a guy.
Yeah, I'm reading.
He can sling it.
Read the team. I see him, some of the veterans, how they talk to him, mic'd up, see what he's doing in the community.
Yep. Talking about Njoku there?
Njoku, Mike Knapp. Yeah, once you see, different little interactions and things like that, I know he has the talent. We'll see. It'll be a competition that usually brings the best out of guys, especially young guys. So I'm interested to see how that quarterback situation.
Right after Shedeur Sanders tightened his cleats and the Browns settled in for what they figured was a routine camp day, the whole vibe tilted sideways. No blazing comet, no UFO touching down at midfield, just a swagger-charged quarterback striding in like he'd crashed the wrong league and thought, yeah, I'll stick around and run this show. The Browns had no clue what storm was rolling in. You'd expect an NFL team to do a quick scout, maybe pull up a highlight reel or two, but nope. They greeted Shedeur with a shrug, only to watch him seize the field on snap one and run the whole operation like a seasoned pro.
First and foremost, he's been the best quarterback in camp. Now look, Joe Flacco ain't had many opportunities. It was a whole day I saw he didn't throw the ball at all. Here's my theory on the situation. They already know who's starting in the number 2 is. They already know. Joe Flacco and Shedeur Sanders is already locked up. You're missing the boat, people. You're missing the boat. Your boy, Kenny Pickett and Dylan Gabriel, oh, they're fighting.
Shedeur didn't merely clock in, he hijacked the session. One moment he's loosening his arm, the next he's roasting veteran QBs like faded names on busted draft boards. Defensive coordinators everywhere had the same gut punch reaction. Uh-oh. His pocket poise? Straight disrespectful. His timing? Psychic. And every pass left his hand like it was laser guided to its mark. While Shedeur Sanders was slicing up routes, the Browns' secondary looked less like an NFL backfield and more like a gaggle of dads sprinting through a Saturday fun run. Big on enthusiasm, short on closing speed. Coaches fought the urge to slam the emergency horn. Players traded wide-eyed, "Are we serious?" stares, and someone even double-checked that a hidden camera crew wasn't about to pop out of the tunnel. But nope, this was pure Shedeur, half cold-blooded surgeon, half highlight factory. He wasn't dropping a casual "I'm here," he was crafting a masterclass. From the first rep, the tempo changed. Shedeur Sanders accepted the snap with steady footwork, diagnosed the Browns' single high shell, and delivered a tight window seam route that forced the free safety to recover late. Throughout the period, he manipulated leverage with quick shoulder fakes, moved through full field progressions, and released on time from a balanced base, consistently putting the ball on his receiver's upfield shoulder. Cleveland's coverage struggled on multiple fronts. Safeties hesitated between deep half responsibilities and underneath support, creating voids at 15 to 20 yards. Cornerbacks and off-man were caught in trail position when Sanders used rhythm throws on 3-step drops, while those who tried press technique had their inside hand neutralized by his receivers' outside releases. Linebackers widened to match shallow crossers, leaving the middle hook unguarded for pivot routes and option digs. One corner attempted a line of scrimmage jam. Sanders immediately adjusted the route to a back shoulder fade, releasing the ball before the break and rendering the press ineffective. Over the session, he showcased pocket discipline, reclimbing to maintain throwing lanes rather than drifting, and finished with a series of anticipatory throws against cover 2 cloud, fitting vertical outs between the flat and deep half defenders. Sanders' combination of rapid post-snap processing, precise ball placement, and pocket efficiency exposed coverage mismatches at every level and highlighted communication gaps in the Browns' Browns secondary. By mid-session, the Browns defensive staff clearly recognized their calls were outmatched. Every adjustment, a roll to cover 6, a simulated pressure, a late rotate to too high, was neutralized once Shedeur Sanders confirmed the post-snap picture. Routes that had taken weeks to script were beaten by timing and location. Comeback set at 12 yards broke open before the corner's transition. Slot seam outs dotted the void between the flat and deep half defender, and boundary receivers beat press with quick hand techniques, receiving the ball before the trail man could recover. Sanders' command was methodical. He used cadence to freeze plug blitzes, re-ID'd the mic when linebackers sugared the A-gaps, and maintained a firm base so he could reset and fire without resetting his feet. His receivers benefited from that rhythm. Top of the stem, eyes back, ball delivered on their upfield shoulder, allowing immediate transition to YAC. The Browns front tried a late stunt to compress the pocket. Sanders climbed 2 steps, re-spotted the shallow crosser, and delivered in stride, turning a potential sack into a 20-yard gain. What stood out most was how little ramp-up Sanders needed. From his first series, he processed full field concepts at tempo, cycling through progression reads without hitching. The poise under interior pressure, consistency in ball placement, and ability to manipulate zone defenders left the Browns' coordinated disguise packages ineffective and forced them into static coverage by the end of the period. In short, Sanders' efficient mechanics, rapid processing, and anticipatory accuracy rendered Cleveland's defensive game plan ineffective at every level, from pre-snap disguise to post-snap spacing.
Imagine there's many people that think Dylan Gabriel's a better quarterback than Shedeur Sanders. I don't care where they were drafted. If the Browns are the one team that thinks that, then I'm going to suspect it's not true. They don't know what
listen,
they're doing.
I every quarterback evaluation for 30 years.
Right.
I never root against anybody.
Yeah.
But I'd be surprised if Dylan Gabriel's ever a legitimate starting quarterback for the Cleveland Browns. I'd be surprised. I just don't think.
Well, then it is a wasted pick because you took him in the top 100.
Yeah, but potentially.
Yeah.
May get away with it because of Shedeur.
An edge rusher chirped at Shedeur Sanders between snaps, hoping to shake his rhythm. On the very next play, Sanders answered with a 30-yard laser, a deep dig from the boundary side that split the single high safety and the trailing corner. He hit the top of a 5-step drop, kept a firm base, and delivered on time to the receiver's outside shoulder, turning what should have been a routine rep into a sudden change explosive. From that moment on, every coverage wrinkle the Browns tried, rotating from cover 3 to quarter half, flashing a Tampa 2 shell, mugging both A-gaps, was met with a precise counter. When corners pressed, Sanders adjusted the route to a back shoulder fade. When safeties widened, he checked to a glance post. When linebackers bailed, he found the running back on a delayed option out of the backfield. Even late simulated pressures couldn't move him off his spot. He simply climbed, reset his feet, and fired. As Cleveland's defenders rotated through checks, Sanders manipulated them with cadence and eye discipline. He froze weak side safeties long enough to create intermediate windows, then feathered the ball into those lanes before help could arrive. When the Browns finally dropped 7 and matched every route, Sanders tucked the ball and converted 2 separate 3rd and 6 situations on the ground, reminding everyone that his mobility is as calculated as his arm. By the end of the session, the defensive coordinator's call sheet looked obsolete. Sanders had neutralized blitz looks, exposed spacing issues in zone, and forced the unit into static base coverage just to survive the period. It wasn't a camp drill anymore. It was a clinic on timing, processing speed, and controlled aggression, delivered snap after snap by a quarterback who never needed a warm-up lap to own the field.
They never planned on taking him. The problem is, like Ocho Cinco said, you got somebody that has endeared himself to the locker room. And guess what? The difference between him and Tim Tebow, the biggest one, is he can play. He can throw the ball. Tim Tebow running around being an H-back. He can throw the ball. And he's done everything he needs to do. He ain't saying nothing. He ain't rocking the boat. He ain't mad about the reps. He ain't mad about none of that. All the people out there want to see is this, like Tyler said earlier. We want to see what he can do with Jerry Jeudy.
That's it.
I want to see what he can do with David Njoku. I want to see him with Junkins. I want to see him with the first running backs. If you are cooking, if you are beating down the doors with the 3s and 4s, guess what? You deserve more.
From the first team period on, Cleveland's secondary looked a step slow. A deep third safety hesitated on a post-snap rotation, leaving Shedeur Sanders free to climb the pocket and fire a 22-yard out that arrived before the defender could plant and drive. The supporting cast around him, players fighting for roster spots, not Pro Bowl invites, benefited from his command. Sanders used tempo to control the defensive front, altered protections at the line, and located throwing lanes so quickly that one receiver didn't register the catch until he crossed the goal line. As the Browns tried new personnel groups, coverage busts multiplied. Starters slipped out for hamstring stretches while rookies rotated in, only to find the ball arriving on their blind side before they'd completed a midpoint squeeze. On a later 3rd and long, Cleveland finally closed the interior rush lanes, compressing the pocket with 3 defenders. Sanders pivoted through the traffic, stepped into a narrow escape window, and, without resetting his shoulders, whipped a no-look pass to the boundary curl for a fresh set of downs. The throw turned a potential sack into an explosive play and left the coaching staff scrambling for answers.
The people who are fascinated by Shedeur for whatever reason, whether it's his play, I guess, last year was kind of fun. If you're just like a guy who grew up like loving Deion Sanders and passed that love on down to your kids, I can see why you're like that. The one thing I will give them is you're looking at this quarterback room. If you're a fan of Shedeur and say, why can't he go beat Dylan Gabriel or Joe Flacco or Kenny Pickett? So I do understand that part of it, right? Because why not? Why couldn't he be the Brown starter in October or November?
That looks like a quarterback room where everyone will get a chance to start.
Grab hold of the starting job. Yes, but I don't think we're going to know which one until we get deep into August. Now, I think, we tracked the reps everybody was getting at practice throughout the OTAs and minicamp. But when you talk to people there, they just want to make sure everybody got what they needed. And that, Kenny Pickett, we find out if he has the goods to be the starter. Joe Flacco, they back him off a little bit. He's 40. He may not need as much. The rookies, Shedeur Sanders and Dylan Gabriel, what do they need to learn to make the transition from the college game to the pro game? That's what the spring was about for the Browns quarterbacks. Now,
Shedeur Sanders has moved from social media celebrity to on-field standout, and ESPN now lists him among its first-team candidates. Reactions are split. Some fans are impressed while others are skeptical. Whether this reflects Deion Sanders' long-term strategy or simply Shedeur's rapid development, the story is drawing widespread attention. Here's a look at what led to this moment.
They never planned on taking him. The problem is, like Ocho Cinco said, you got somebody that has endeared himself to the locker room. And guess what? The difference between him and Tim Tebow, the biggest one, is he can play. He can throw the ball. Tim Tebow running around being an H-back. He can throw the ball. And he's done everything he needs to do. He ain't saying nothing. He ain't rocking the boat. He ain't mad about the reps. He ain't mad about none of that. All the people out there want to see is this, like Tyvis said earlier. We want to see what he can do with Jerry Jeudy.
Online reactions are sharply divided. Some fans strongly support Sanders, while others argue he is overrated. Traditional analysts cite statistics and claim his recognition comes mainly from his father's name. Sanders supporters are actively celebrating his rise and already predicting a future NFL career. Sports media outlets have made his candidacy a central topic of debate. The discussion now extends beyond statistics and victories to include his marketability, public image, and on-field presence.
Sorry, is Shedeur Sanders going to get a chance to win this job? Do you believe he gets a legit shot to win this job?
Listen, I think, first of all, the action's going to really start in training camp. Like, forget all the OTA stuff. You don't win a job in OTA. The real action starts in training camp. And just like Shedeur said, during the mini camp, when it's time to take your reps, you got to make the most of it. Because I think early on, there's going to be a lot. Remember, Joe Flacco didn't hardly practice in OTAs and mini camps because they were giving the young guys. Right. So when he gets his opportunity, he's going to have to make the most of it.
Analysts are closely reviewing game footage to evaluate Sanders' decisions and mechanics, while others examine his social media activity to see how he balances content creation with quarterback duty. Shedeur Sanders' placement on ESPN's early first-team list has taken over the college football conversation. Supporters circulate his highlights and argue that his on-field production and leadership justify the honor. Skeptics claim the recognition relies too heavily on his family name and question whether his resume is strong enough for first-team status. Analysts are rewatching game footage to assess his reads, accuracy, and pocket presence, while others examine how he balances a high-profile social media presence with quarterback responsibilities. The debate has pushed other storylines, such as conference realignment and NIL issues, into the background, leaving fans and commentators focused on Sanders' performance, marketability, and overall impact on the sport.
I'll keep saying it. I believe Shedeur Sanders should play more games than any other quarterback on this roster this year, because he's the only guy that I look at and say, they might have something here, because I'm telling you right now, they left night 1 of the draft saying we are taking our quarterback next year. So it's on Shedeur or Dylan or Kenny, probably not Joe,
To change their mind.
to change their mind.
But you got to find out. You gotta find out.
Opinions differ on whether Sanders is benefiting from his family name or simply showing real progress, but the attention is undeniable. Social media is flooded with edited images elevating him to legendary status. Critics argue the first-team nod is driven by hype and marketability, while supporters point to his flashes of strong arm talent, field vision, and decision-making. Regardless of motive, the announcement has dominated the football news cycle and intensified debate over how much of his rise is performance-based versus media-driven. Highlight reels rarely show Sanders' turnovers, late-game mistakes, or inconsistent stretches. Being named to a first-team watch list suggests sustained dominance, something Sanders has displayed only in flashes. His selection appears driven as much by brand recognition and media appeal as by performance. ESPN's decision has intensified debate. Data-driven critics post statistics that question his resume, while passionate supporters predict awards and future NFL success. Commentators recall a time when first-team consideration required years of proven excellence. Yet many fans already see the announcement as confirmation that Sanders is on track for major college football honors.
Shedeur Sanders has earned first-team reps when training camp commences later in July. I'm not saying like he's the first guy up when you do 11 on 11s day 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 at training camp. I'm not necessarily saying that, but he's the one quarterback that we didn't get a chance to see take reps with the ones. But I think Shedeur has a chance to like make this conversation interesting if he gets those reps with the ones and he has the same success that he did with the 2s, the 3s, and the 4s. I have confidence he can show you something, but I got to see it. We all got to see it before we can actually judge that.
Some believe Deion Sanders is already preparing for an award ceremony, while others are furious, threatening to protest ESPN's credibility over Shedeur's first-team mention. Critics argue that honoring Sanders without a full season of elite play undermines college football standards. Supporters insist his performance and profile justify the recognition. The debate reflects a broader clash between traditional merit-based evaluation and modern brand-driven visibility. In today's landscape, first-team consideration is no longer only about statistics. It also involves marketability and audience engagement. Whether welcomed or rejected, Sanders commands attention and embodies the sport's shift toward both performance and personal brand.
Sometime last week, and then and I just tweeted that out again this morning, and then today the Joe Flacco one got posted. So running through this, and then of course we'll still have Dylan will be next, and then Shedeur will come last.
As training camp nears, Mary Kay Cabot is providing straightforward analysis of the Cleveland Browns quarterback competition. The starter has not been named, but she has moved away from her earlier skepticism of Shedeur Sanders and now acknowledges his talent and potential. Cabot explained that if Joe Flacco is chosen to start week 1, it will mean he is the most prepared to play immediately. This approach would also give younger quarterbacks such as Kenny Pickett time to adjust, refine their skills, and maximize their potential while Flacco handles the early workload. She added that a Flacco start would not prevent Sanders from earning the position later in the season. The depth chart remains flexible, and Sanders' continued development could put him in line for an opportunity as circumstances evolve. Cabot also noted that Pickett could win the job for week 1, but he must demonstrate he can integrate smoothly with the offense and perform reliably under pressure. The Browns want a leader who can control the huddle, execute plays efficiently, and maintain composure. Pickett's performances in upcoming practices and preseason games will be critical in determining whether he secures the starting role or Sanders ultimately takes the reins as the season progresses.
Things like that. It doesn't mean that that Kenny can't swoop in there and steal that job by them, but he's really going to have to show that he has a complete mastery of this scheme and this system, and that they don't have to dial it back a lot to put him in there. So these will be some considerations, and I do think that that as the preseason goes along, it will become evident.
Mary Kay Cabot recently stated that Shedeur Sanders is ready, and the Cleveland Browns are monitoring him closely. After a strong showing during organized team activities and minicamp, Sanders has made notable strides in his development. With continued progress, he is expected to return to the field prepared to contribute meaningfully. The Browns coaching staff is tracking his growth, and anticipation about his long-term role is increasing. Cabot added that if Sanders maintains this trajectory and continues to demonstrate poise within the team, he will have a legitimate chance to earn the starting quarterback job. Each practice practice reps strengthens his case, reinforcing the possibility that his development could benefit both the player and the organization. As Sanders impresses, discussion about his future in Cleveland becomes more compelling. Cabot also emphasized Sanders' advanced understanding of the offense. She noted that his football IQ appears in every drill and that he seems ready to execute the Browns system at full speed. His ability to process defenses quickly and make decisive reads distinguishes him from his peers. With the appropriate opportunity, Cabot believes Sanders could become a genuine difference maker for the Browns. One area Cabot highlighted is Sanders' command of pre-snap adjustments. His capacity to diagnose defensive fronts and communicate changes gives him an edge and reflects high football intelligence. If he translates those reads into consistent connections with his playmakers, he could elevate the Browns' offense significantly. By comparison, Cabot said quarterback Dillon Gabriel is still refining his grasp of complex terminology and play calling. While Gabriel possesses upside, Sanders' comfort with intricate concepts and his ability to manage tight pockets under pressure give him a clear advantage at this stage. Gabriel must sharpen those elements to compete at Sanders' level. Cabot previously reported that Sanders had already earned first-team practice snaps ahead of Gabriel. Her latest update confirms that Sanders is now approved as the Browns' starting quarterback, solidifying the organization's commitment to him as QB1. Expectations are high, and his response to the challenge will be closely watched throughout training camp and preseason. Cabot further noted that head coach Kevin Stefanski authorized Sanders to take expanded first-team reps beginning next month. This milestone underscores Sanders' readiness and the coaching staff's confidence in his progress. As the regular season approaches, Sanders aims to cement his status as the starter, and the competition for that position is intensified. Though Sanders leads the race, Kenny Pickett remains in contention. Cabot stressed that Pickett must prove he can integrate seamlessly with the offense and perform consistently under pressure. His performance over the next several weeks will determine whether he can challenge Sanders for the starting role. With both quarterbacks vying for the top spot, the Browns' Week 1 starter will be one of the most scrutinized decisions of the upcoming season. For now, Cabot's reporting underscores Sanders' rapid ascent, strong football intellect, and growing command of the offense, qualities that position him well to lead Cleveland's offense when the opportunity arrives. They say training camp decides depth charts, but Shedeur Sanders began fighting for his job long before he will step inside the Browns facility. While most first-year players squeezed in one last vacation, he slipped onto a private field in Texas, strapped on Cleveland's helmet and shoulder pads, pulled a fresh number 2 jersey over his chest, and started rifling timing routes as if it were the opening drive of Week 1. No cameras, no hype track, no product placement, just sweat, cadence, and ball placement. A rookie does not rehearse in full game gear unless he already envisions himself commanding the huddle. Plenty of observers shrug that clip off. They insist the fifth rounder, quote, isn't ready, cling to depth chart conventions, or whisper that the name across his shoulders did most of the talking on draft day. Maybe it is the Deion connection, maybe it is a preference for prospects who blend quietly into the background, or maybe the league's gatekeepers fear the possibility that the kid is better than the quarterbacks they have spent months promoting. Whatever the motive, the countdown has started, and video rarely lies. Shedeur Sanders is not preparing to arrive. He is preparing to lead. Footage of a 22-year-old quarterback running live reps in July should dominate highlight loops, but it barely registers on national outlets. Why? It ruins the tidy narrative. The easy storyline paints Shedeur as a pampered legacy prospect banking on his father's fame. Yet the tape shows something different. A rookie drenched in afternoon heat, drilling footwork, calling protections, and imagining cover 2 rotation before the first official meeting ever takes place. Elite mental prep looks boring on social feeds. It looks devastating when the season starts. Walk into Cleveland's quarterback room and you step into politics, not simply competition. Joe Flacco, a Super Bowl MVP in decline, carries institutional trust. Kenny Pickett, rescued from Pittsburgh's reset, carries hometown intrigue. Dillon Gabriel, the third-round system fit, carries draft capital the staff must justify. And then there's Shedeur, the lightning rod whose presence alone spotlights every bias in the evaluation process. Coaches frame it neatly. Rookies must wait their turn. The truth is less polite. Practice snaps are currency. Perception is elastic, and early allocations already favor Pickett and Flacco. It is the oldest playbook in the league. Lock vets into the headline roles before pads even crack. Then let repetition shape reality. Sanders refuses to cooperate. He is not a fourth-string camp arm. He has engineered game-winning drives under national scrutiny, operated against live blitz looks most prospects never face, and more than any quarterback in the room, documented his own off-season obsession. No social media rollout, no brand consultant, just pads, cleats, and an unlit practice field. If his last name were Smith, pundits would label him the sleeper of camp. Instead, politics trails every throw. Training camp rotations expose organizational intent. Beat writer Fred Greetham already reports that Pickett and Flacco will open with first-team reps when veterans report July 23rd. Gabriel grabs the developmental snaps, leaving Sanders the leftovers. That isn't performance-based, it's narrative-safe. Gabriel doesn't threaten hierarchy, Sanders bends gravity. Watch the details. Does Shedeur steal 11-on-11 snaps with the twos? Does he run red zone installs or 2-minute drills? If he does, coaches are admitting he is forcing his way in. If he doesn't, they are postponing the inevitable. Either way, the private field reps have sharpened his timing and condensed his release. He is not hoping for an opportunity, he is prepared to seize one the instant it appears. Cleveland's joint practices amplify that tension. First come live periods against the Panthers, then sessions with the champion Eagles. Those reps belong to the starters, so Flacco and Pickett will absorb most of Carolina's disguised pressure and Philadelphia's exotic fronts. Sanders' proving ground will be the preseason opener on August 8th. Under the stadium lights, he will get entire series, real reads, pockets collapsing for real. If his command mirrors the footage from Texas, coaches will have to answer why he never saw earlier work. Reps are scarce. 10 padded practices separate veteran arrival from game 1. Even an even split, something that never happens, would hardly suffice. Instead, the staff will funnel snaps toward the comfortable choices. That strategy can bury a rookie, but it can also spark an eruption when limited opportunities turn into highlight drives. One flawless touchdown march in the second half of a preseason game, and the dog pound will chant his name. Then the staff's narrative control evaporates. Criticism of Sanders has never matched the scrutiny applied to his peers. Analysts nitpick a ball pat, a foot angle, a pump fake, Pickett's inconsistency, Flacco's diminishing velocity, Gabriel's college system crutches. Discuss politely, if at all. With Shedeur, the critiques arrive as coded doubts. Does he rely on the family brand? Is he coachable? Can he stay humble? That double standard is as old as the league's resistance to outspoken black quarterbacks. Add Deion's unapologetic persona, and each Sanders rep becomes a referendum on establishment comfort levels. Shedeur answers not with rebuttals, but with work. Work captured in silent footage more deafening than any debate show monologue. Quarterback drama masks broader roster cracks. The Browns receiver group is crowded yet unproven. The safety room failed to create turnovers a year ago. Interior defensive linemen are still rehabbing, and the offensive line must retool on the fly. Which quarterback can navigate that turbulence? Flacco's pocket mobility is limited. Pickett's confidence remains fragile. Gabriel is months away from processing NFL disguises. Sanders, forged by perpetual doubt, offers poise under chaos and meticulous preparation, a combination this franchise has lacked since, well, almost forever. Forget politics, depth chart etiquette, and recycled sound bites about developmental timelines. The only metric that counts now is who did the work. Sanders pounding through full gear scripts in late June is not vanity, it's vision. While the league sleeps, he refines his drop steps. While media speculate, he rehearses third down checks. He has already decided what he is. The organization must decide if it can recognize it in time. The preseason will provide the answer. Live bullets, real blitzes, stadium noise. When those throws leave his hand under pressure, no one will discuss ball pats or surnames. They will ask how a quarterback this prepared slipped to round 5. And if the performance matches the preparation, excuses about lack of reps will dissolve. It will be production against perception, and Shedeur Sanders has been producing where no one could see. Ready is the wrong word. He has been ready.